Morning, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday special. Today, there is five of us with Ross jumping in and out with some technical difficulties, but we've got Jay as well. Also, with some technical difficulties without his video on, but we've got his voice, and we've got Helen as well, and Adam in the car. So we try to make this work as fast as possible. And today's Sunday special is all about expectations and reality. So Adam wrote a great piece this morning about that kind of playing out in the inflation economy kind of area, and we'll bring it to everything, I guess. Expectations versus reality. So Adam, do you want to just again give a brief update for people who haven't read your Sunday supplement yet?
Well, not really, Piotr. I think they should all read it. It's a disgrace, but I'm happy to. Yeah, of course. So, first of all, to inflation, really, which is a lot about expectations, and reality takes a bit more time to bite. And we measure these things in arrears, and at the moment, 6 to 8 weeks makes a big old difference. We don't find February's supposed figure out until late next week or early the week after. US have posted a number nearly 8%. Expectations are now that we're going to see double digits, although a lot of this is predicated on the war. But at this point, it would be a surprise if it came to a swift end. We look like we might be settling in for something a bit longer. And the aggression levels have obviously gone up another notch this morning since the supplement was posted, with some activity, unfortunately, very near the Polish border, which will have risk off all over the markets around the world first thing tomorrow morning. You can absolutely guarantee that, because this doesn't look good. So inflation in a normal environment, or in the textbooks, probably is the way to think about it, would make you bring big ticket purchases forward. That's probably not going to happen at the moment, because people are still going to be in a saving mentality because of the pandemic, and a saving mentality because of the war. So this has a downward dragging effect on everything in the economy, because we rely so much on consumption. We've got all this money out there. It's not helpful if it doesn't get spent. The circular flow of income does not weave its magic. The government doesn't get its cut at every single transaction that takes place, pretty much. It's not helpful for economic growth. So that's one thing. And then energy pricing, we've got that interesting balance now between winter is over, ultimately, and the price cap. The throttle is off from the 1st of April, so 51% rise. But we're really not going to feel that biting until October. But I think you want to be ahead of this, not behind it. So I talked a bit about service accommodation, and that the staycation market will be getting more expensive because the running costs are going to go up. Flights abroad are getting much more expensive as the price of kerosene goes through the roof. Helen nods with pain on her face from very regular experience, unfortunately. Yeah. You just have to come back to England, H. That's it. That's the only way to get around it.
Oh, it's not that bad.
But there's going to be problems ahead on that front, and that then HMO. There's obviously issues, but there's no point just raising problems. There's a few thoughts about solutions in there around reassessing, particularly anyone, especially if you've got commercial property, but even anyone with resi where they pay the bills, so I'd include your own home in that, should be looking at solar PV again, because the numbers have changed, and they've changed dramatically. The inflation price has not hit the PV installers too badly as yet, but the payback periods have been halved or even further because of the increase in the price of electricity. Yeah. So there's money to be saved there. There's money on the table, and then there's the EPC benefit from doing it. So if you're a medium and long-term player, then you're going to be looking into those things. You should be looking into those things. I don't think the EPC thing is stopping at a C. The consultation's now saying they'd like to see B by 2030. That's quite scary. But we need to see what the new scoring system is to achieve the B, and we need to see what.
That's a really good subject. Maybe like later on we can discuss a bit more about this, because I had someone chatting to me about possibly like creating a business around installing like those heat pumps, the solar panels, everything that the government is providing with like grants, but there's a lack of kind of labor force to qualified labor force to basically use those grants. As we can discuss this later on in the during the call. Maybe some people will find it valuable.
I think so, Piotr. And then the last thing that I rounded it off with really is expectations and perception around investment returns, because we're quickly approaching a stagflation environment if we're not already there. And you're looking at a place where in the 1970s, those who have got enough dark humor like myself to joke about these things, the investment game became about who loses the least money in real terms. So we need to remember, there are other alternatives available. But having said that, in times of significant inflation, property and hard assets in general do tend to do rather well. So it might be comparatively well rather than absolutely well. And if you go back to some of the stuff I've been saying for the last 2 years, after pandemics, returns on capital tend to suffer and the labour market tends to benefit. And we are in the middle of the embodiment of that in a rather large way. So the seesaw between and the tug of war, I'm watching closely the vacancies numbers that are coming out next week from the ONS. And I'm watching closely any data about average wage rises, but also wage rises for new starts versus wage rises for existing employees. And you think, I did a piece last year on furlough and an economic analysis of furlough and whether it was a good, or rather than one of these moaning newspaper pieces about we spent 78 billion on furlough or whatever. It's like, well, what did it actually achieve? How much money did it save or cost the government in reality? And the cost of new hires is going to go up, not just because of inflation, but because of that differential in the wage side of things. Then you've got training, remote work, a lot of things we've taken for granted for 20 years. I was pleased to hear about 10 years ago, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I did an MBA. And one of the things that I heard was Deloitte, as part of their recruitment process, actually part of one of the 83 stages or however many you need to do to get into Deloitte was a film test of you managing an email inbox. And it would test how you prioritize things, how quickly you could respond, your level of organization into where you would put those emails. Would you give them a label? Would you put them in folders? Sounds really ridiculous, but a really big skill in this day and age, and actually a bigger skill in the field of remote work, because self-organization in general has just got up by a premium of hundreds and hundreds of percent, and no one's really talking about remote work yet as well. And that is another expectations versus reality. Oh, it's great to work from home, or maybe it just is for a bit, or maybe you need to get together to do certain things, or maybe that a hybrid model is the way forward, but how does it work for the employer and the employee, and who's going to win the arm wrestle? At the moment, the employee. So there's quite a lot of stuff in there. If you want to unpack any of that particularly, I'm willing to do my contractual 87.4% as required, as you know. But if you want to pick on anything in particular, let's go there. But it does go beyond that, I think, as you were saying, in terms of, one of my least favorite phrases since I entered the world of property networking is fake it till you make it. But of course, when you look at expectations versus reality, I've had I'm trying to raise some money at the moment for a few deals, right? Because I've got so much stuff on the table. And I've had a few conversations with people, and historically I'd say, look, I don't really talk to people in the property circles because, do you know what? Their expectations are too high. And all scams that I've heard in recent times and all Ponzi schemes have normally started with, I was promised 30% returns and things like that. And it's like, well, there's quite a few serious investors I know who, once the returns are going over 10%, their bells are going off left, right, and centre, because they're thinking, right, well, how can you really afford to pay that? If you're the equity end of the capital stack on a big development, yeah, sure, it's going to be more than 10%. It needs to be, because you're taking too much risk for it not to be. But if you're offering first charge security and getting 20%, someone needs to look at something here, because the person you're investing in at very best is an amazing developer can deliver on the ground, but is financially completely useless, which is never ideal, you know? So there's a lot of carrying the can around people that other people have invested in over time. So, well, I lent money to various people who I could, well, it wouldn't be slander because it's all true, but various names we could drop. And I'm a bit concerned about lending money to you. And I'm like, well, I'm a bit concerned that I'm in the same boat as those guys. And if you think I am, there's 4,000 hours of content and me wittering on about various things to go and listen to. And, you know, go and listen to a bit of that and you work out whether you think I know what I'm doing or not, you know, but you know, that's the danger of perceptions versus reality when it comes to gurus and when it comes to, you know, perceptions of going on a 2-day training course and thinking you're going to suddenly be a developer or whatever, you know, it's
Or
just
even like in auctions, perception of buying something and like how it then turns out, like just watching Homes Under the Hammer and thinking how easy it is to buy something, do it up and sell it. Or like even just like looking at auction catalogs, like for us, when we know something, we know something. Like for example, with one of the auctioneers, when we see that they feature a lot, that means that this lot is not the best lot. It's probably the worst lot, and they have to feature it in order to sell it. But for a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, it's a featured lot, must be really good," and then they actually bid on something that they wouldn't plan bidding on. So it's all applicable to like a wide range of things.
Or you got the one auctioneer where we know that if the person with that within that auction company has listed that property, it's got their name. I'll contact such and such if you're interested. We know that if it's the first time we're seeing it in the auction, not to worry. Like we'll put a little note saying this will be back in the next 3 or 4 auctions, and the price will go down 100 grand, 50 grand, 500,000 until they find the right point. Wow. Like the first time we see it enter the auction, we don't get excited, we don't fuss, because we know it's just going to keep going down till it finds its level. So, you know, other people have the expectation it's in there. If I don't buy it now, it's not going to, I could miss out, someone else can get it. So sometimes it's knowing those small differences that can give you a slight competitive edge.
So, I think that's a great strategic point, isn't it, about auctioning, as much as your contrarian thinking, your experience dictates that contrarian thinking is the way to go there, because quite often the 3rd time in the catalogue or the 4th time, the average person looking through the catalogue is just going to go, well, there must be something wrong with it now. I've seen it before. They're not even tracking what you just said, Jay, about the price ticking down over time.
Yeah.
They just look at the visuals and think, oh, that's the same. I've seen that before. Oh, it must be dodgy. Whereas you guys are waiting till the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th iteration before potentially striking, which is a really, really good tip for people listening, I think.
Well, the beauty of that is we figure out what the problem is the first time it's offered. So the fact that it's offered 2 or 3 times more than that doesn't affect us at all.
Yeah.
Especially in what we're looking at. Whereas, like you said, most people go, oh, there must be something wrong with it, I'll steer clear. They're not even bothering to see what is wrong with it and how easy it is to solve. Because the amount of value you can add to an asset just by resolving a small issue that puts so many people off is really where we kind of pitch our tent.
So I'm curious, like how do you kind of uh, like get the right data or like the right experience to like assess whether your expectations are kind of like aligned with some sort of reality in the future? Is it even possible?
That's a fab question. I can probably do 45 minutes on that. So I think Helen should probably have a pop before I do.
I was just going to say, like, as you're talking about this, it's, you know, none of us likes that title. And I think everybody that's written their kind of intro so far on the UK Property World, the Facebook group, where it says, you know, meet the expert. We've all been like, expert, not my word. That's not what we'd call ourselves. But we're expert by very nature of having that experience. And that's what you're talking about, Jay. It's, you know, it's looking and watching and spotting the pattern and then kind of going back and then, oh, look, it's happened again. And oh, look, it's happened again. You know, and certainly, you know, people are asking me like, how and why do I choose, you know, developers or people to invest in? Like, because I've, you know, kind of sat back, dabbled and watched people for years. And it does take years. So rocking up thinking, yeah, you've got a handle on this day one because you've been on a 2-day course. There's a huge divergence there between expectation and reality, isn't it? But I think that makes it all the more important to contact and be in touch with the right experts. And the experts you normally want to talk to are the people that don't call themselves experts. They definitely don't use the word guru, and they don't go around shouting about their services. I had a chat with somebody at
I'm off to change my LinkedIn profile now. Bloody hell, Helen, you should have said earlier.
But I had a chat with somebody on Friday, and she's like, and I was saying, oh, I've done this, and this type of stuff I do. She's like, I didn't know you did any of that. I'm like, yeah, because I don't go around like shouting about it. Because exactly, I don't want those labels and that, that yucky, icky feeling that goes with it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think what I would steer people towards is, and this, I hopefully Helen will get quite excited here, the behavioural science side of the equation. What I find really interesting about what Helen just said is, although what she does is different from what someone like Warren Buffett does, right? Where's the key there? Being able to sit on your hands. As an experienced trader, she knows sometimes that's the very hardest thing to do. So you can get a feeling that just because you're not doing anything, that you're not doing the right thing. It might be the right time not to be doing anything, right? Yeah. So conscious decisions. So back to the behavioral science points that really come out. We're all inherently biased as human beings, right? We usually share a relative, it all depends on our personality types, but we all share some over-optimism on some levels, possibly not Piotr, possibly not Rod, right? But that's what makes them very, very good as contemporaneous people who will nudge you away from something where you might be being too over-optimistic. It's very, very useful to have a different attitude towards certain things in certain ways. So, be realistic about the cost base, be realistic about the time. Piotr shared a great story on Facebook that I read, I think it was Facebook, about a deal that you did about 6 or 7 years ago, Piotr. And in terms of vacant possession and things like that was really, really super. And it talked about really not that to me was not being over optimistic on the way and just thinking, we can sort that out, it'll be no problem, because it could be a year to sort it out, and you don't want the holding costs of a year to just completely ruin your returns, So over optimism would be number one. Number two would be recency bias, and there's a little bit about this in today's supplement, not in so many words, but it's very, very easy, and none of us should blame ourselves for when there's something as dramatic as a war, and there's pictures of devastation, and there's, even this conservative government is looking at ways of getting Ukrainians into the UK. I mean, that's pretty serious with their attitude towards immigration, right? They're now, after a pretty poor start, look like they're starting to take it relatively seriously. So our recollection of recent events means so much more to us than what happened 3 months ago, 6 months ago, which is why I love economic history, and I love the way that Ray Dalio approaches these sorts of things, because it's waves, it's cycles. Psychologically, it's helping you cope. Where's the short-term debt cycle? Where's the long-term debt cycle? He talks about that all the time, right? And it's important to understand just because something has changed. So one stat from this week, which is one of those, I love these ones that are kind of page 7, 4th headline down, and you just think there's much more to that. There's much, much more to that. It's just not a clickbaity thing. So one of the largest UK building societies has got 12% more assets under management than last year. So in and of itself, unless you're me, you're not going to get that excited by that headline, right? But think about the backdrop in which that's happened. So returns have been utterly, utterly appalling, somewhere between 0.1 and 1%, depending on how long you've locked your money away for, right? And they've still put this is a large building society who would grow their asset base at 2, 3, 4% a year if they were lucky in a good time. 12%, massively significant. So what does it mean? Lots of money's been saved. We know that lots of money's been saved. We know that the household balance sheets improved massively in 2020. Does inflation, even at a peak of 10%, on the basis that it goes down nearly as quickly as it went up, and probably looks like it's settling at about 4 to 5 in the medium term, which is a problem in itself, but not the worst problem for property, I must say. It's not going to be a bad thing for us necessarily. It's probably a good thing if it's 4 to 5. At 10, it's bad for everyone. So that there's a difference there. But in the medium term, what does that mean in context? You know, so it's important that you understand your recency bias, and the opposite of that as well, your rose-tinted spectacle bias. So I can't remember the technical name for it, but I always think of it like that. You know, I said to someone a while ago, they said, "Oh, it was so great in the 70s." You know, I was thinking, what, the 3-day week, you know, all the other things that were going on, near crash of the UK economy, double-digit inflation, double-digit interest rates, couldn't get it under control, oil crisis. I was like, "Are you sure it was that good?" And he said, "Well, you know, you could leave your front door open. It was dead safe." I said, "You could leave your front door open because you had nothing to steal. That's not good. That's rubbish, right?" So you have to be able to have an ability to put those things into context and realize that one bad week or one bad bit of news doesn't change everything. I see people sometimes who make a snap, and I'm getting these stories from the buyer's end of the fence, right? They're coming to me, I'm buying it. Normally that means there's a reasonable deal there for me. Right? I'm thinking it's a pretty good deal for me. I'm not saying I'm perfect, I don't get it right every time, but they've woken up one morning, made a snap decision and said, right, today's the day to sell it. It's like, wow. So that's your exit. That was your exit plan all along? Or, you know, I'm working through a deal at the moment where there's a £40 million balance sheet, 40 million. It's too big, if I'm honest with you, but we're working through it, see what we can do. As for the property control schedule or similar spreadsheet or data capture, it's one Excel page with a few numbers, lots and lots of gaps in it, and it adds up at the bottom to 40 million quid. And that's what it is, and that's the schedule. And it's like, did the FD produce this? I mean, it's utterly mind-blowing. So those things are out there if you put yourself in enough conversations and get into the right places at the right times. You'd think if we take that forward and manage to do that deal, we'll probably be on the better end of that deal than the vendors will, one way or another. As I say, ticket size is a bit eye-watering, but, you know, you've got to push yourself, right? So let's see what happens. Can I borrow a £5, by the way? Is that okay?
Only have euros. Sorry.
I can just imagine Adam and Ross digging down the back of their sofas for a couple of shekels, just arse in the air, just trying to really dig in, see what they can pull out of the air. Yeah, 40 million. You'll be able to do it. What are you going in at? 30 pence in a pound? That knocks the price down somewhat.
You've been bugging out conversations again, Jay.
I just know you folks too well.
It's a blunt tool. Price is a blunt tool, but it's a valuable one. Yeah, but that is very much, you know, you have to put all those things in. We all battle those biases on a daily basis. Helen made some really good points about expert. You know, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing to become an expert there is an element to which it's relatively distilled pseudoscience, but I think it's a pretty good benchmark realistically. So all of the things we've talked about there already, we're all subjects of putting the 10,000 hours in, you know, and we don't need that expert badge to be displayed for marketing purposes or otherwise. If other people say it, I guess it's kind of nice. I just sort of see it as a bit of a limiting factor, I suppose, because I think, well, if I'm an expert, I don't need to work hard to make myself better at what I'm doing. Yeah. Whereas I'm quite hungry to work harder to be better at what I'm doing. And the day I don't feel like that is the day where I'm going to start thinking about activating my exit plan. Not the day I get up and go, does anyone want to buy this portfolio? And see what happens, you know.
But I think that's probably why we don't like that word expert, because that kind of implies that you know it all, you know everything. And it's like, I think, you know, it's one of those things, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So we're just always like, okay, we're at this level, but now let's learn about exactly that, how to manage a £40 million deal. Like, there's just always the next level, isn't there?
Yeah, and an expert, or like calling someone like a label, that it's kind of it's a static thing. So and you only get to, like, we call it static thing for a moment because of the activity and everything that you're doing. And once you stop doing that because you got that label, then you then lose that label because it's you stop doing the activity that gave you that label. So I yeah, that's why we always tend to focus on activity. Like the more activity, the better.
Yeah,
The right activity, the right
I think
activity.
that, I
yeah,
think there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
strong I think there's a strong difference in connotation between expert and expertise or specialism. I think you can specialize in something, but I think it's that continued. If you were in the professional world, if you were a doctor, a solicitor, or you were high up in finance, you would be doing CPD. If you want to maintain any kind of
Yep.
professional or regulatory standard, you would be doing CPD. And I think what Piotr was mentioning there is our CPD is we are continually trading at auction, we're continually doing things, we're continually coming up against new challenges or new issues that we hadn't faced before. And it's that constant evolution that kind of, so I think expertise is more of a path that you walk. Once you get to
Every
your
new auction
10,000
catalog
hours.
is like a Champions League match.
Well, I think that really, I might have told this story before, so shoot me if I have, but it'll have a different conclusion to it. So you will know it, Jay, because it's the first day you and I met in person, right? And you were speaking at an event, and I was at that event with Ross, and I was at that event with another large trader called Mark King, who you may well have heard of.
Yeah.
Now, the point really is, someone got on the stage a little bit before Jay, and he had quite an arrogant swagger about him, and he started waxing lyrical about how he'd done 500 deals in the last 10 years. Sounds a bit like me, doesn't it? But it wasn't me, for reference. But he'd done 500 deals in the last 10 years. And then he pointed to the room, and there was maybe 40 people in there, and he said, "That's more deals than all of you guys put together." And I just thought, I looked to my left at Ross Harper, I looked to my right at Mark King, and I just laughed. I was like,
Wow.
it's not that at the time. It's like, it's more than I've done, but I'm not sure you can lace these guys' boots. So unfortunately, we were in the front row, and I'd say visibly disturbed by this opening gambit. And so I started looking him up on my phone at Company's House to see whether his accounts would match that giant swagger. And I know the assembled company will be very surprised to know they absolutely didn't reflect that in any way, shape, or form. So perhaps he just had all his assets in trust. I don't think so from the rest of the chat, to be honest. I don't think the only trust he was involved in is gaining other people's trust, and no one should ever trust this man, in my opinion. Of course, that's just my opinion. But that just tells you about perception versus reality and tells you, about where someone's ego is at to think that was the correct thing to say. Even if it was, do you think that's going to win the audience over, just overall belittling them, even if it had been true? But the overarching point is two people on the either side of me who absolutely were subject matter experts is probably the best way to describe them.
Yeah.
Right. And why were they there? They were improving themselves. They were taking a weekend to go and to meet people, to see what was out there on the training circuit. And Jay did a brilliant talk that day. It was fantastic. There was another couple of people there delivered some great stuff. But this guy, just wow. And ever since then, he's been in my very top of my book of weapons grade arseholes, to be honest with you.
Was this the chap that made a big deal about only working with people that he liked, or you had to go through like an interview state? Yeah, okay, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Wasn't a fan. I actually, it's funny you mentioned this story because someone said to me a couple of days ago, I don't know, maybe it was at PIP, I'm not sure. I think it was at PIP when we were there on Friday. I said, "Oh, how did you meet Adam and Ross and that lot?" So I was telling them the story from my side. I went to this event, I did a couple of talks, and one of the talks was an auctions talk, and like the whole room, you could tell a lot of them had. When I started off, I always asked the questions: how many people went to auction? Raise your hands, blah blah blah. And I said I got down to like the last bunch, and there were just three And I think I called you arseholes. So there's just these three arseholes in the front that stuck their hand up for everything. And I said it was really pissing me off because normally I go to these talks and I start off really basic. And I said at one point during my talk, I was trying to pull out as much esoteric knowledge as I could to see if I could get these guys to like look slightly like. And I said I pulled out one thing and they looked at each other. I thought, I got them. I fucking got them. It was like, I'm sure they don't know what that means. And I like the whole talk. I think I deviated part of it just to see if I could beat them, because obviously I had no idea who you were, and I was pulling out some stuff. And I think there was one bit where Mark was nodding, and I think either you or Ross looked across to him, and I think he nodded at you like, "I'll tell you later" or something. And I was like trying to pull out this like the most random bits and pieces, because like out of a whole room of people who knew nothing about what I was talking about, there were these three guys in the front that had me clocked from the start, and it really, for some reason, it really annoyed me. But it was
hashtag Jay's private masterclass. Hashtag not competitive.
Hashtag not competitive. Totally.
It was brilliant because someone asked a question like, Jay, what have you done in property that you what haven't you done in property that you'd really love to do? And I said, I'd love to do a church conversion. Right. And it was literally, I got off the stage and then Ross literally almost rugby tackled me, showed me his phone because, you know, he's a really technical minded person, showed me the phone and was flicking through. I could barely understand a word he said, but he was flicking through the pictures saying, this is my this is my church conversion. And I think it was only a short while after that we connected a couple of times, and I think I sat at you guys took out a table at the Property Investor Awards, and I think it was the year that you had accepted the award for the Facebook Group of the Year, UK Property Traders, and I think it just went strength from strength from strength. But yeah, that's normally how I tell that story. Again, it's perception versus reality.
And it depends which angle you see it from. That's brilliant. You've never shared that. That's absolutely brilliant.
But the real difference in that story and the last one to me is like, yes, you were playing your own little game, and yes, there's competition in there, but actually at every step you were giving value, whereas the other guy, you know, going on about like whatever he'd done, like insulting the audience, like what a muppet. But be like spectacular lack of EQ. You know, it's just
his company is called something about creating assets or building wealth or something like that. And I was just thinking he should be called Value Destruction Limited or something like that. You know, it just and surprisingly or unsurprisingly was heavily involved in raising funds for JVIP, as it turned out in the end. So the moral of the story is, you know, if you think it's too good to be true, etc., etc., I'm afraid.
Yes.
It's
and actually,
the reality.
Bringing it back to that, you know, kind of we started talking about at the beginning, where it's people in property expecting kind of disproportionate returns. Again, I'll try and find it. Gosh, it's somewhere on my LinkedIn feed, but Manish Kataria talks about it. I've done posts about it, and we just keep bringing it back to the capital stack. If you understand the capital stack and the general types of levels of returns you can expect for the risk that you're taking, then you can see where that offering like slots into that, and you'll know if that's appropriate reward for the risk that you're taking, or better still, is the risk. Do you understand the actual risk that you're taking when someone's giving you 20% on a, you know?
Once I was doing like a sort of leadership program, and part of this program was like dealing with upsets and things like that, and then we were giving like a model of how upsets are being caused, and like the three things that cause upsets. And so within that model, and one of those was unfulfilled expectations. Like when we have expectations about something and then they don't match what happens, then there's an upset. There's like a emotional reaction to it, and then it's got consequences. Blah blah. So it's I think the key thing is to basically like base your expectations on like experiences of other people in similar circumstances, and that's why it's so important to like have communities like partners in property, like people who do similar things around you that you can be speaking to on a regular
Yeah.
basis, because like we all have blind spots, right? And we always kind of going to be trying to see things from the best perspective, or like we'll miss things where other people, if they see us doing something stupid, they can tell us like, you're doing something stupid, like don't do it, or like check this, and then suddenly we see some completely different version of reality that's possible.
It's just so very, very, very good, Piotr. And I think it's also part of the same. I about 4 years ago at a PIP meeting, I had one slide of my total level of presentation experience. No, I created a slide in a presentation, and it was about the hamster wheel of property training, right? And it was kind of like, here you are, you come into a funnel somewhere, and what you first of all need to be convinced of is that property is the answer to all your hopes, dreams, and problems and whatever, right? Then we go, right, you buy single lets, how to do it, BMV, blah, 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 right? Then we go into HMO because you want to get more yield, you want to squeeze more cash flow, it helps you leave your job faster, whatever, whatever, whatever. Then we get on to SA because you can get even better returns. And all you've got to do is run a whole hospitality business start to finish on your own. So it's dead easy, obviously. And then you get into board of all of that. You're only getting 8,300% returns on this deal that I've sourced for you. That's not enough. So how about a bit of FX? Because it's easy. And obviously, idiots in FX markets give money away all the time. You know, it's not like large banks run gigantic trading desks making billions of pounds a year out of retail bloody idiots. But never mind. Actually, crypto's better than that. So crypto is better, and you'll make even more from crypto. And then the final level, you can learn how to sell on Amazon or whatever the next, you know. And the point is, I don't mean to denigrate any of those things, although I obviously just have. But all of those, as a subject matter expert, are very valid ways in which you can make money.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you're always chasing the next course and the shiny penny, then you're never going to make any money, because all you're going to do is donate 50,000 quid to the training provider of your choice who's got them in your funnel. And then you're going to move before taking any action. You're going to carry on educating yourselves in a, you know, unregulated, thin at best, wafer thin environment of weak academically. I'm going to stop before I have a heart attack. But
So I have a suggestion, a game to play. If you were a trainer training people how to do solar panels installations and things like that, what would be in your training manual? What would be in your training workshop? What are the kind of things that people will need to be looking at? We were to do a master class of setting up a service-based business in like 10 minutes.
okay, well, I think page 1, you're going to say, look, whatever business you're going to be in, you're going to look at a sales and marketing function, you're going to look at a finance function, and you're going to look at an operations function. Yeah. Go back to the point you just made, which is an excellent one, around having other people around you and all the rest of it. The strong likelihood is you are not brilliant at all of those three things. It's nearly impossible to be. If you are, you're somewhere between Gary Vaynerchuk and Elon Musk, right? So, and in fact, not even Elon Musk, because he doesn't even bother to try and be good at some of those things. He just gets smart people to do them for him, which is obviously the smart way to do it. So you've got your three basic functions of any business there. Which ones are you specializing in or not, or who's doing them for you, in or out of house, realistically? And then start looking at the operations first, because only a scumbag sells something that isn't ready yet, right? So get your operations manual or processes and procedures in place. What bits are you doing? Presumably you're looking at the business development, and you're also doing the procurement, because it's solar PV panels, so you need materials and labor. So where are you getting them from? How much are they costing? So we're into numbers now, right? We're into the numbers side of it. So we're going to build a manual on how to actually do the installation, how to onboard a customer, how to do all of the other things that need to fit into those functions. We're going to look at the numbers behind all of that stuff, and we're going to see how much it stacks up. What are the margins in the industry? We're going to do a proper bit of competitor analysis. It doesn't need to be an MBA dissertation. So we're going to phone up 10 or 20 people. We're going to hopefully speak to some people who are already in that industry, who are maybe geographically located in a different area from us, so they're not threatened by us as competition. Some proper competitor analysis and put that into our very basic, ultimately, business strategy at that stage. And we're going to know how we're going to fund it, right? We're going to know how we're going to finance these things. When do we get paid? What are the payment terms? What are the payment terms to our suppliers? How are we sharing the risk side of this? Are we taking on debt? Are we using equity to do it? I don't need any more time. That's how to do it. Just get on with it. There you go. Easy game, this, mate. Easy.
You could have made it more difficult, like you're a one-eyed, one-legged. You just made it a little bit trickier there. But no, that's actually really good, because a lot of people, when they start thinking about creating these businesses or putting like a process together, is they miss out a lot of that operational side of things.
Yeah.
It kind of goes, how do I get that sales funnel together? How do I get the marketing funnel together? Let's focus on bringing it in before we focus on actually how we're going to handle it. How strong are the foundations of the actual process, the administrative side, the managerial side, how efficient and how effective is that? Because that is the bedrock upon which the other two things, which are the income producers, are gonna run on. If the income producers are running like that, actually the deliverability of that it would be put under massive pressure and questionability if it isn't on that bedrock of organizational and operational processes. So no, it's always good to hear that.
I'll add in as well. Call it fintech, and you'll get your valuation up by a multiple of 10 times. And also mention the words minimum viable product at least 15 times, and you'll get your valuation up another £500,000 as well. So I wasn't cynical enough. In the first time, I actually tried to answer the question instead of being a prick. Whereas now I've reverted to my natural mentality of being a prick.
So Adam, you had solar panels installed in your place? Is that
so? My first set of PV panels were put on the roof in 2010. That's right, Piotr. Yeah, wow. And I've done a few sets since then, residentially and commercially. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did you find that process? I mean, was it quite easy to get people to install those things? Was it a kind of intensive management process from your side, or was it like you just pay and it's done? What's that?
So the very first set that I did, I had in my mind, as you do quite often, a few high level things, and I didn't worry too much about the detail, right? So it was a thing I did. I went and did my own research as a purchaser of the system. I went and looked at the numbers. I looked at them in another couple of ways, see if they were pessimistic or optimistic. Actually, they were pessimistic. I went to the biggest supplier I could find who would do it, who I was convinced would still be around if there was a warranty claim, right? Now, the industry actually solved that problem because they started using third-party insurance-backed warranties. But still, I wanted to be able to pick up the phone to someone who cared about their reputation if I needed to. Yeah. So I used Tesco. They subcontracted it to the Mark Group, who you may well be aware of, big installer of energy efficiency stuff all over the country. I don't know if they still trade under the same name, but they certainly were. They're certainly still in business. And it was dead easy from then on in. Someone called me. How did they manage my expectations? Well, they told me it was going to be harder than it actually was. So one of the best expectations management lessons in business comes from the RAC or the AA. They both do this. So you're stuck on the side of a road. It's inevitably dark. You've inevitably got a flat tire. You inevitably don't know how to change a tire. And they say to you, someone's going to be with you within 90 minutes. Don't worry. If it's safe to get out of the car, get over the hard shoulder, tell you all the things you need to do. A little bit like a 999 call, really. Talk you through, trying to make you calm. And then someone gets there in about 12 minutes. And your expectations are just smashed because they've set them low. And then the person gets there, and inevitably, they are a subject matter expert, right? They're a nice man. They're a very nice man. They're a very, very nice man, or whatever they used to say. They get it sorted for you, and it's just a breathtakingly wonderful experience. Yeah. Even if they have to tow you, even if they have to do anything. So there's one of the best And what do, for example, Helen, what do property developers do when they're trying to get your money into a deal?
I swear to God, like you are reading my mind today. I'm like, this is like on a scale here, on a spectrum. You have the RAC and just beautiful management, under promise, over deliver, and every developer, and I'm friends with a lot of them. You know, like ever. I've had one person in 20 odd deals now pay back early, but also but on the delivery, it's a 1 year project. When has development ever been a 1 year project? You know, and then you're like, oh, it's another 6 months, and then 4 years later, you're like, do you remember that? You know, remember that thing I signed that said 12 months, and now it's 48 months. Could we have a chat about that? Oh no, because they stopped picking up the phone by then. You know, it's just like, I'm like, it's my one thing, and it's the rose tinted glasses thing. Just be realistic, add a little bit on, you know, under promise, over deliver. Oh, honestly, reading my mind today.
So as time went on, Piotr, the returns got better and better very quickly because of the feed-in tariff. And I also understood my ability to negotiate in block rather than on one property. And the panels prices were crashing down. So it was a perfect storm. It was a sad thing because it was actually a really good idea. Had the government thrown proper resource at it, then they could easily have made the system work in a much better way than it did. But it was turned into a political football because it was a Labour Party concept that then got administrated by a coalition government, both of whom were not Labour. So there was a political reason for them wanting it to fail. And it was a really stupid thing because if they carried on and tweaked it and done the right thing, we wouldn't be in the mess we are today about renewable energy, EPCs, and household income squeezes, dependency on Russia, whatever you want to call it. We wouldn't be in any of that problem because ultimately the sun still comes out every day. It's one thing, even in the 2020s, the decade of the Black Swan, as it's soon going to be called, we're all sure, we can still be pretty sure the sun comes up. But if it doesn't, nobody cares anyway because we're all gone. So I bought another 5 systems on block. I've probably got the price down about 50% from my first set of panels. And the tariff had gone up a bit. So this is where the arbitrage has started to creep in. It was a good bet in the first place. Now it was looking like an amazing bet. Had I known then what I know now, I would have been installing solar panel systems by the hundreds, if not the thousands, because the opportunity was utterly exceptional. But we all knew at the time it was going to come to an end fairly quickly, and it did get the legs chopped off it, and then eventually came to a sad end in about 2017, I think. But then you go back to the argument of why you want them. There's the tariff side of it, and there was still what's called the SEG, the Smart Export Guarantee, which was paying a little bit for what you generated. But it's now much more about the cost savings, and because the prices are through the floor. This is low-tech stuff, ultimately. You know, we're going to get to a place within 20 years where these things get a lot more efficient and you get a lot more out of them with the coverage that you've got. But it's still relatively low-tech stuff. There's also some other good solar solutions that are not photovoltaic. So one of the things I looked into when I did my own house build, because it was inspired by passive house principles, is like these heat bricks. So the heat effectively is stored in, it's dumped into these bricks. Now, the trouble is they're quite big and bulky. So you probably want to put them in a basement or a plant room or something like that if you're doing a build. But they're incredibly efficient. They're about 85 to 90% efficient, a bit like mechanical ventilation heat recovery. They heat up and they dissipate out accordingly as you draw the heat away, within the confines of the fact that if you wait days and days and days, the heat will have dissipated. So the clever things, but very, very low tech, not enough really. I mean, obviously Tesla are all over this sort of stuff, but the problem is they put on the Tesla branding premium, which means that the paybacks don't work so well, and you've got to be a bit of an Elon Musk super fan to make it work. But again, with the electricity price, some of this stuff needs revisiting, because now you can get, and not necessarily Powerwall, but you can get solar PV batteries that are not branded. Other brands are available, right? And those brands will pay back within the 10 years, and they're warranted for 10 years. So you've basically got your money back And as I'm sure everyone listening will know, if you're getting your money back in under 10 years, you're getting a 10% plus return every year. There's worse things you might want to put your money in at the moment when the stock market looks as jittery as it is and all the rest of it. So 10% returns aren't easy.
Maybe like we can take this whole conversation and make it into like the full episode, because there's so much to talk about in those this eco kind of EPC friendly talks. Like there's a product that I heard about which basically is like like the air bricks that at the bottom of the property. So there's like you purchase the brick. It's a device, and then that device you put it in where the brick is, and then it connects with Wi-Fi, and then it allows the air to come out when it needs to, and it measures like the all 5 or 6 different things, and then opens and closes, and it apparently it brings the EPC up to like C if you have like up to 2 points basically if you have that.
Wow.
Compared if you don't have that, which there's a lot of products right now that are interesting, and maybe we can like before the whole call to like discuss those all different things, how to like improve efficiency by installing the things that bring the heat in, but also manage things inside, and then also like maintain the heat and all sorts of things. What do you think?
That sounds great. I'm a
Yeah.
monster geek on that stuff, so I love it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, the chap who spoke at Partners in Property on Friday, just gone, was he was peeling back the face of the universe, talking about this kind of stuff, just a peek at God. I think he was talking about this like this wafer thin, almost paper-like material that you put on the ceilings in some of the rooms, and it's kind of like an infrared heating. So instead of it being able to dissipate through windows and doors, it basically heats up the masses in the room rather than heats up the room. And that sounded really very intelligent, but I have no idea what kind of price that would set you back by. But he was talking a great deal of sense and a level of detail that if you haven't seen it and you are a PIP member, you can check it out in the repository, I guess, once it gets uploaded. But yeah, that was an insane level of detail and information. But yeah, you kind of think it sounded initially like it was an EPC assessor. And it turns out that this guy is like an EPC professor rather than an assessor. It was absolutely brilliant. But I think a whole session on that would be very valuable to a lot of people, considering the requirements on landlords and the EPC ratings that are starting to put a bit of a scare amongst the pigeons at the moment.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Could do with that in Malta. It still baffles me every day how they still design houses that are flipping hot in the summer and freezing in the winter. I'm like, I don't know how you've got this so wrong.
Wow. Usually they like all the Mediterranean countries are quite good with like actually making the houses like cold in the summer and warm in the winter. Or like just
not in Malta.
No, Malta. Okay. Well, we won't discuss
I can't even begin to tell you. While I was here, I got the bill. Bear in mind, I've had my parents with me all over winter. I got my electricity. I can't even tell you. I can't even say the number of what my electricity bill was over winter, having had my parents, so 3 of us in the house, which was pretty kind of 24/7. Bear in mind, we were locked up in quarantine for 2 weeks for December, January, and February. Actually, that's not even including February. For 2 months, electricity. It was just like, oh my God. I'm like, oh God, we're going to need a new mortgage here.
Electricity is a luxury now.
Honestly, I'm like, bring that sun back quickly. Turn everything off. Whew.
Good. Okay.
There's no gas though in that. That's the problem.
Perfect. Well, let's just like revisit a couple of comments for and before we close, and it's Ed is buying. I think Chelsea cannot accept cash, so I think you might struggle, Ed. Well, let's
might be a lease option.
Also, Ed, on road to London by train 35, in the car 65. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah.
The other way.
That has changed. That literally has changed as we go there.
Wow. That is actually a good thing. Dominic, homeworking very interesting on villages. People and community away so much, so spending more locally. Then there's honeypot towns and villages attract visitors too. Yep.
We did a great workshop in 2020 that Patsy Richardson put together. It was called Navigating Through a Changing World. And we were talking about sort of not de-urbanization, but more urban sprawl around how it captures some of these towns and villages. And we were saying back then how much people would be able to make if they picked the right spots, where still things like connectivity to London would still be massive. But instead of it being 60 minutes being the rule, let's say, perhaps the new rule is 90 or 120 minutes, which takes in an awful lot of extra stuff all around the Midlands and the Southeast and even bits of the Southwest and all the rest of it as well. So I think that's spot on, but I think that was very predictable in the way that it came together. The other thing that's going on, other than just the home working, is the 4-day week is starting to bite a little bit in the UK. It's making a few headlines. I'm hearing like a company every couple of weeks that are going to 4-day working weeks and doing. And then I mentioned it with someone the other day and said, "Oh yeah, my daughter does that. Yeah, they do that." And they're called a global company who are doing 4-day weeks now, and they do 8 till 6 in theory, but they really do, depending on how senior they are, 5:30 till 11 or whatever. But you know, they're doing that sort of stuff, but they're only doing it 4 days a week. So interesting dynamics for the future of semi-rural and rural areas. The difficulty will be planning around there is not usually particularly easy. So it's where does A meet B on that one is probably the problem to consider.
Yeah. Next comment from Dominic as well. Record meeting Jay, the great Kevin Wright. Put my hand up at his presentation, asked why you here. I was amazed there was no push to buy anything. Jay, you weren't selling. Good piece of feedback, Dominic. Thank you.
Dominic, I knew you were going to put me in the shit another week in a row. No, you don't understand. The true sale is when you're not selling anything at all. That's the
right. True.
They don't call him Grandmaster Jay for nothing, my friend.
Jedi Jay.
What a response! Selling without selling, dear boy. Selling without selling.
Nice one. James is doing a cost feasibility right now for PV solar panels for HMO. Warranty is a big issue, as is the supply install and being still in business when they fail. So are you saying it's now a solvable issue, Adam?
I suspect that the warranty James might be talking about might be on the inverter, because on the panels it's not a big problem. If you've got a new roof and you've had a warranty on the roof, it's going to compromise warranties on things like that. So you do need to consider that. But the panels are warranted for 25 years plus, and there's just nothing to go wrong. I mean, they still work after 40, 50 years. No big issue. They just degrade slightly in their efficiency. But once they're on, and taking them off is utter lunacy. Why people do that, when I see it, I just think, go back to Value Destruction Limited and my friend Mr. W that I didn't name earlier, but I'm getting closer to naming as time goes on. That's just confirmed to Jay he does know who I'm talking about. But the big problem, apart from the panels, to be clear, so you got your panels, you got your racking, but then you've got your inverter. So that's what's got to convert the alternating current into the direct current that you need to use in home appliances. So you really got two choices. You either run things off the AC, which nobody really does, or it gets converted into DC through what's called an inverter. Now, the inverters have never been fantastic. They're quite big, lumpy things. They're decent size. You've got to have somewhere to put it. And then some were trying to mug people off with 5-year warranties. That's not acceptable, because that's not going to be your payback period. Probably it might be on a commercial site. Your payback period might be three years these days, or might be 2 years, to be honest. So that's how good the returns can be. But you've got to make sure that that inverter works, and you want one with a 10-year warranty as a minimum, James, without a doubt. The whole, if the company goes bust thing, is not a big deal, because ultimately you're going to get an insurance-backed warranty. The difficulty will be making sure you've got the right sort of insurance-backed warranty that someone isn't going to wiggle out of. We've got a problem at the moment with a guy who sells damp-proofing stuff, and we've bought a place, and it's got a transferable guarantee, and he's basically said, I'm not transferring it. We've been on Google reviews first port of call to give him some 1-star reviews. Unfortunately, he's already got a load of 1-star reviews from people saying, if you buy a place, he doesn't transfer the warranty. So a third-party warranty can actually be better in those situations, but who's underwriting it, and what are the terms of that warranty, and do you need to stand on your left leg and repeat flamingo 7 times every 3 minutes in order to keep the warranty live? If you do, that's no use, obviously. So just need to unfortunately read all that horrific documentation, or get an insurance broker or someone you really trust to take a look at it, pay them a few quid to do a précis of it, and make sure you've got the right insurance back warranty. But the installer going bust shouldn't cause any problems at all, really. When I've had one on all the panel systems I've only had one inverter peg out on me, and that inverter was changed under warranty with no hassle at all by a local firm who had nothing to do with the install. They just do some solar stuff around Solihull. They sorted it. It was a no hassle process. It was the system was down for about a month, but it was a week or two to notice that it was down, and then get it all done. It's probably down for more than a month. It's probably down for 2 months, to be honest with you, by the time it was all finished. But it's physically swapping. It's like changing a consumer unit, but a bit easier, really, to be honest. So I didn't have a problem with a warranty claim. But the other thing is, mate, the inverters these days are like 500 quid to £1,000. So don't let that put you off. Price in, just like you would with a boiler last 15 years. Yeah. It's got to be priced in. Just amortize it. Just treat it in an accounting way. I wouldn't let any of that put you off, James, personally.
Cool. Brilliant. Well, we'll be back next week, answering all kind of questions about
from expectations to solar PV in 1 small hour.
That's it.
I might be back in Malta by then. I'll have my own solar power going on. Yay!
Yeah.
Hooray.
Nice. We'll be back to a full international format. Hopefully Ross will be back as well. We need to ban Ross being in the car during the thing. Apparently overheating is the issue.
Yeah, he was having too much solar power, bless him.
Okay, brilliant, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks everyone for comments. We're gonna be chatting next week about solars, about EPC, about sustainable ways of keeping things warm and cold and everything else. So see you all next week. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.